The True You podcast is all about tapping into the resources of the true you.
Problem with trying to be someone else who you think you need to be to get by and get more is that you have to try harder than you need to in life.
And that's exhausting because you've lost access to resources like creativity, clarity, compassion, and confidence.
We recognize it seems odd to discover that you aren't being the true you, but there's an empowering homecoming that you can feel when you rest back into your authentic self, the true you. Welcome back to the True You podcast with Bill Tierney and Martin Kettelhut. We're both coaches. Bill's is focused around using the IFS model, inner family systems. And he's also very focused on producing results like real recovery and healing and change lives. And I'm a leadership coach. I have a recent book out called Leadership as Relation. And so my coach is usually with executives, people who are in leadership positions. But I'll tell you the honest truth. Leadership is something we're all practicing. We lead our lives, even if we're not managers of a corporation. And we lead our families, whether we're the father or the son or the wife or the daughter, that we all have a chance to lead in our classrooms, in our lives. So this podcast is focused on bringing out the true you, the one who does lead his life or her life, right? And we've been having a number of guests who are very familiar with the IFS model, and we've been talking, I think, on a very high level with them about their spiritual lives. And I'm thinking, Bill, today would be a benefit for all to kind of bring it down to the ground for a second and just like the real basics for those of us who don't have a whole bunch of training in examining ourselves. How do I get in touch with that true me? Like, I know I'm struggling against life, and if I were being the true me, things would be easy. But how do I identify what's in the way and get back on track?
Great. I'm really glad that we're going to be having this conversation today because, as you say, many of the conversations that we've had with our guests recently have been beyond the realm of what most of us walking around on the ground, boots on the ground, life as lived, are familiar with and maybe even comfortable with. Yeah, so it'd be great if we could have some conversations about what difference does it make? Why is it so important? Why are we talking about true self? I'm guessing that our listeners have some interest already in true you.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I really? Wouldn't it be cool if who I am really is okay?
Right, exactly.
And what's scary? What's scary about just showing up as I truly am? So maybe we can dive in there.
Something around like, what makes you think I'm not being myself? How?
Right. Yeah. You saying I'm being phony?
Well, I think that's a real good opener, in fact, because some of the signs. I mean, we all want to be ourselves. We all think we're being ourselves, but we get deluded. Frankly, I've been it many times. You think you're being yourself, but you notice what you notice that's the tip off that you're not is that you're stressed. There's some sort of stress with a person or with a task or a job, and that's your clue. Like, okay, I'm not being the true me.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that word stress.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like it got popularized, I want to say around the 70s, starting around the 70s. I've been on the planet long enough to remember that stress was not a word that was commonly used around my house, around my school.
No, I agree.
Growing up until I was in my teenage years, 15, 16, 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And stress showed up with words like hassle, right on the heels of words like cool and groovy. And certainly those don't mean the same thing.
Well,
But
I
I would
remember
hear,
even at that age, it's so great you're tacking it down to that time, because I remember around that age I was in high school, late 70s, and some kids had more uh, acne in their face, and my mom said, well, they must have more stressful lives. I remember that's one of the first times I heard the word.
our mechanical engineers out there might have a good definition for stress that might point us back to why would that particular word be used to describe those kids that have extra acne on their face, or more than many others probably do, and maybe there were even kids, I didn't know any, that didn't have acne at all. But what I'm just going to look up real quick, what is the mechanical definition of stress?
Yeah, I mean, there's mechanical stress, like when a car drives over the bridge, it puts stress on the bridge. That's
The intensity. Here it is. The intensity of internal forces with the body resulting from external loads expressed as force per unit area. That's the mechanical definition, just like what you're talking about, the weight of a car on a bridge.
right. But that is not what's happening in our psychology when we feel stress.
So why do we call it stress then?
Well, there's a similarity,
Okay.
right? You're struggling against. What you're struggling against is your true nature. That's what I'm saying. That's why it's
Struggle against and indicates that you've got two forces opposed.
right. You want to be yourself. You want to be true to yourself. And there's some other influence that has you working against it.
Here's a definition. Again, this is, thank you, AI. The psychological definition of stress is a state of feeling emotional strain or pressure, often arising from a perceived threat or challenge. So fear comes in here. Fear might be one of the factors that would have two internal forces opposed.
Exactly. Like, I fear that if I don't play baseball, my parents won't accept me because everybody in the family is great at baseball. So I'm stressed about going to baseball.
But I don't even like baseball.
Exactly. It's not.
I'm feeling the pressure to play baseball, but I'd rather play checkers or chess, or I'd rather be home drawing or painting or watching TV or playing a game.
Take it to the workplace. I'm stressed about this presentation I have to give.
Well, what's the stress? What are the two opposing forces there?
Right.
That's a great question to ask here, isn't it? When there's stress, there's going to be at least two opposing forces, and what are those forces? So let's think of an example. What's been stressful? Just outside my door, as we're recording this episode today, we've had a locksmith who we've just asked to rekey our locks, and we've been waiting for him for a day and a half. We didn't know when he was going to show up, and he just happened to show up at the very same time that you and I decided to had a pre-scheduled appointment to record this episode. Well, he's been enjoying the use of his drill quite a bit. Just outside my door, it's been quite loud, and so I've been experiencing some stress. But one worry, concern, or fear that I had, and I characterize this as a concern. I do want to get the doors rekeyed for several different reasons. Another opposing concern is I would like to record this session and have the sound quality be good. So there's been a stress in me as I've listened for, is he done? Is he done drilling? Is he going to make more noise? Is this going to work? Is this going to compromise the integrity of the audio quality for this episode? That's a form of stress.
Yes.
As time goes on, since he last drilled, which has been about 10 minutes now, I'm beginning to relax and calm down a little bit, but I'm still a little on edge waiting for that next drill to hit. Hoping he's done.
Yeah.
So that's a form of stress.
Totally. Um, I mean, there are levels of stress too. In any of it's like going back to the PowerPoint presentation at work. Like there could be opposing forces could be what I want to say in this presentation, but versus what the company wants me to say. And I have to somehow find a way to say both, or I'm giving up my integrity, or I'm going to get fired. Like those are the opposing, or it could be, that I'm not good at putting together PowerPoint presentations, and yet I have to do this. So it's not my favorite thing to do, but I have to do it. Opposing forces. It could be deeper and bigger, like I don't really belong in this job. I took it on because everybody in my family my dad did it, my brother does it, but I don't really like this kind of job. And yet I have to do these things. And so there's a really deep, career change on the horizon, stress being between what I want to do with my life and what I accepted because that's what everybody else said I should do. Right.
If you're in recovery and it feels like something's missing, check out my website, billtierneycoaching.com, for articles and videos about how IFS recovery coaching might help. Now, back to the show.
As you're listing these examples, and they're all really great examples, I keep thinking in terms of values and priorities, which I think can be values and priorities really do point to exactly the same thing. There's something of value here that has me doing what I'm doing and choosing what I'm choosing and behaving as I am and feeling as I am. If I'm feeling an internal stress from these two opposing concerns, worries, or fears, then it's because I have colliding values that don't align and in fact even oppose each other. Let's take one of the examples that you used. Here I am in this career. I hate the career. I'm not talking about my career, but as an example, someone hates the career. And as you say, but they're in the career because everybody in the family's always done that. My grandfather was an accountant. My father was an accountant. I'm an accountant because it's the family business, but I don't like it. I'm just doing it because that's what was expected of me. It was kind of easy because it was handed to me. I make good money doing it, but I don't enjoy it. So the values are money and security, reputation and family expectation, ease as opposed to effort. And the other concerns that oppose that would be things like
self-expression,
and fulfillment, finding something that I enjoy, something that I would love to do, with or without concern for income and security. Those collide with each other and they come into opposition. And really, even in this example, we can look at it from the perspective of this is an argument between being who I think I should be, need to be, or am expected to be, or just being myself. And that gets confusing.
And it points to a great boots on the ground exercise. I'm just making this up, but look at your values. Like in that stressful situation, look at what are my values that's pulling me in and start to prioritize. This happened to me very recently. I was stressing about putting time into my writing versus time into my coaching practice, mostly in the way of drumming up business, right? I love the sessions. I could do that all day, all week, but it was about spending time. And so I started to ask myself, and this is fun. This is enlightening. This brings joy when you do it, to just start to look at what's for and against each of these sides, right? And I started to see that what's really important to me is my creativity. It's one of my top values. That I want to be the author of my life. And so that became the overarching value under which I was then able to prioritize the writing and the business, right? They're both authored I'm authoring a business. I'm creating it. I'm the generator of it. Same thing with my writing. But it was, that I got to see like, oh, what's most important, the top value here that organizes all of this and took all the stress out once I identified it was I want to create, I want to author my own life.
You heard me say earlier a couple of times that before I landed on the word values, I said there are concerns, worries, and fears that that collide with each other.
Yes.
In opposition. You're now we're talking about values of creativity and authority. You want to be the author of your life. That's what I'm calling authority.
Yes.
Those and you recognize that those need to be the values that everything else is decided after. You didn't say it exactly that way, but does that work?
Yeah.
What were those other?
Say authorship instead of authority, but that's
okay. Authorship. Okay, good. Personally, I like authority for myself. Personal authority is a big value of mine.
great.
I want to be I love how you said that. I want to be the author of my life, and I call that authority.
Great.
I want to be the authority in my life. Not that I wouldn't bend to other authorities that I respect who have been further down the road as mentors, but ultimately I recognize I'm the author of my life,
Great.
regardless of where I've gotten resourced outside of myself.
Mm-hmm.
So my question for you in the same example then, as you're trying to sort out how much time do I spend writing and how much time do I spend pursuing business for coaching and how much time do I spend actually coaching?
Yes.
Is that what you're describing?
Yeah. So the tension is what you're asking. Now, what were the opposing?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it was about how much money do I really need? It was about money versus, let's just call it having fun.
Money versus fun.
And so, I really got to see, and I'm very satisfied with choosing fun over money. Like I've got enough to live on. I was pushed by notions that I picked up in my life about how much money I should be earning. That was on the one side. And then there was but what do I want to, what I really want, my heart wants to do with my time. Right. I discovered by putting authorship at the top or authority that, as long as I've got enough to live on, that doesn't need to be a priority to be drumming out new business.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that went below writing. So now, right, I prioritize writing as long as I'm making enough money to live on.
Yes. So that's how you sorted that out. You chose fun over money because you have enough money.
And because the true me is the author of his own life, not a slave to making money.
Earlier today in my women's recovery group, my participants in the group heard me use this phrase, what is so? During a piece of work that I was doing with one of the clients, I use this phrase in this way. By looking at what is so and what was so, we can begin to distinguish between the parts of us that are influencing us to respond to the present moment from the past or from the present. And if we can defer to the present, we're going to notice that we're going to have a lot more power than when we defer to the past. And even distinguishing that what is so is not the same as what was so is extremely powerful.
Very, very powerful. Yes. Yes. That's great. I talk about the same thing in my forgiveness article on Substack and in my newsletter recently too. We need to forgive ourselves is the point at one time this was important. I needed to get my career up and running. I needed to devote a lot of time to that and get that. And I'm at a different stage of life now so that I can reprioritize and forgive myself for the fact that I was being run by an old pattern.
Let me see what I think I heard you just now say. It wasn't a pattern. until maybe now or recently, right? I don't need to be right about this, but I think what you're saying was that at one point in your life, money needed to be the priority.
Yes.
You needed to get your business up and running. It wasn't a pattern though until you got in the habit of making it a value rather than consciously choosing, is it still needed?
Correct.
And recently you asked yourself that question. Do I still need to be pushing for money as an override, as a value that's greater than fun and self-expression? And you chose, given that you have enough money now, what is so now is I have enough money. What was so previously was that I didn't. Given that change in reality, current reality reflects that I have enough money, therefore I've got room to have fun.
Now take our accountant, our hypothetical accountant who went into it because that's the family business. Maybe nothing in his circumstances have changed, except that he's feeling the stress. This really, I've been doing it because, that I prioritized conformity over, right? And nothing about that has changed.
Conformity over agency. Yeah. And nothing about that has changed. Therefore, but okay. Has something's changed. If this accountant, if this third generation accountant is now challenging that in himself or herself, then what has changed?
Der hat die Schnauze voll.
That's what I thought you meant. What in the world did you just say?
In German, it's he's got his nose full, or his snout full, meaning had enough of it. He's had enough of it.
He's had enough. It's time to blow his nose. Yeah, it's time to look at what he really wants to do.
Yeah.
He's recognizing the pain of compromising agency for conformity.
That's right. Yeah.
And now let's bring it full circle. By the way, I've got a hard stop in about 6 minutes so that I can get ready for my men's recovery group. How does this apply to true self? And earlier I said, the argument, I believe, will almost always boil down to, am I being who I think I should be, who I'm expected to be, who I believe that I have to be, or am I being who I really am with this decision, with this behavior, with the choices that I make in my life? So I'm wondering how this conversation can be applied for our listener. And it occurs to me that we're faced with choices every single day. And if we're not already in a new pattern of recognizing and honoring the current values, then we may find it difficult to, be honest enough with ourselves to choose from true self. Not that there would be a deliberate and intentional dishonesty, but it's not accurate. That'd be a better way to say it. It's not accurate to choose from what was so, especially when we haven't slowed down long enough to see if what was so is still so.
Right.
And maybe that's all there is to do here. If there's anything to do at all, is to pause, step back when feeling this internal stress, these two opposing values, and ask ourselves, does this value A, does it reflect what is so? Or does it reflect what was so? It might even reflect what I'm afraid might be so.
Exactly. Yes.
And then look at value B.
And
does it reflect? Go ahead.
I think it's something that we need to do regularly because things do change, and whether internally or externally. And so we need to revisit this question from time to time in life. And I mean, if you have a daily practice, that's great. Or maybe weekly when you're sitting in church and, coming to yourself again, the eyes of God, right? Those kind of practices are there for a reason. They have us ask this question, am I still aligned with my values and being my true self?
Are my values still true? Would be another way to say it, I think, to ask the same question.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what a fun conversation this was. Although it was brief, it's the first time that you and I have had a chance now to speak one-on-one without having a guest involved as well in, a long time, 4, 5, 6 weeks. Maybe.
Yeah.
And so because this is so valuable to us, here's a value that Marty and I get to spend at least one session per month in the True You podcast, just having conversations like this, spontaneously generated from practically nothing. So that we can kind of hit the reset button and be refreshed and ready for the next few guests that we're going to see. I wonder if it'd be useful to talk about who's coming up. That might be kind of fun, huh? Before we say goodbye.
Okay.
So who is coming up? Well, we're recording this on April 23rd, 2025. Lori Chansey, who was a guest in the Leadership Coaching Podcast, one of our first guests in that podcast, will be joining us again next week. Pal and Alex are going to join us from Europe to talk about the way they use IFS and something that they do 3 or 4 times a year called the Unconference. Really looking forward to them as guests. And then my writing coach, Jerry Waxler, will show up the following. Actually, it's going to be that very same week. He's going to be here with us on the 7th of May, and Pal and Alex will be with us on the 5th of May. Of course, those episodes will be released something like 4 or 5 weeks later. But as you're listening to this podcast and that's it, and this episode, and it's been released, you can expect those guests to show up in that order in the following weeks.
Sounds good.
Sounds great. And then you and I again in about 5 weeks.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Marty. I'm off to my men's group.
Enjoy.
Nice to see you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
We appreciate who you are, that you would be listening to this podcast, and want to acknowledge all those parts of you that yearn for the experience of the true you.
If you like this episode, click like, share it with others, and be sure to subscribe. Listen again next week for the newest episode.
Check show notes for a transcript and a link to resources, including a link to let us know if you'd like to be a guest on our podcast.
Thank you for listening and going on this journey with us back to the true you.